How's that first taste of Aggie football in 2023 sitting in, guys? Did y'all have a great Monday? Were you at work or did you have the day off? If you were at work, did you have a pep in your step? Or if you had the day off, were you just looking at highlights and reading stories all day, looking at the landscape of college football? Because that's the beauty of when A&M plays well. You get to enjoy all of college football. You get to enjoy the downfall of other Texas schools that aren't Texas A&M, TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech. All had rough weekends, but the Ags can't say the same. We came out, took care of business, had a great showing. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you continue to enjoy it. But it's a big week for Texas A&M. I have deemed this the biggest week of the season for the last few months. I've been calling this the game where we're going to know if we're truly past that 5-7 debacle that was the 2022 season. And we're feeling really good. So you know when you're at dinner, you have a favorite restaurant. And you go there and you have a go-to meal. And that meal's really good. It's a good meal. You like it. You know it's good. But let's say you go and maybe the service was bad, the food wasn't as savory, they didn't season it right, and you had a bad experience. Well, the next time you go to that restaurant, you're going to have a little bit of doubt. You're going to be a little bit nervous. You're going to be a little uncertain of what your experience is going to be. Well, to make that analogy work for Texas A&M, the first meal of the season was absolutely delicious, and we're going into this next meal, which is a game at Miami, with high hopes and a little bit at ease. Because if y'all are anything like me, I was very nervous about this Miami game, very apprehensive how this team would look on the road, first road test of the year, no true road wins last year. Obviously, everything we saw last year, Miami's a really good team. I feel a lot more confident now that we've seen the team play. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about the team in just the one game. A lot of questions got answered. A lot of my biggest offseason questions were answered in this first game. And of course, obviously, take everything with a little bit of caution. It's only one game. But as we saw last year, that one game can prelude a bad season. The Sam Houston game left a bad taste in our mouths last year, and that just wasn't the case this year. So we watched the game. We felt good. I don't know if you saw my immediate emotional reaction after the game, as I typically put out. Very happy, but I had some questions, and I went back and reviewed the film. And I want to share some of my findings with you today, share some of the conclusions that I've drawn, some things we've learned about the team, and maybe just some things to look for going forward. Maybe a few areas of concern, because nothing's ever perfect, especially in a first game. But let's talk about that last game and talk about this team moving forward. So what did we learn? Well, I'm not going to bury the lead here. The main thing we learned is that Texas A&M has an absolute baller at quarterback. Someone who knows how to put the ball in the hands of playmakers and take care of the ball while doing it. And look pretty cool while doing it. Connor looked like the dude out there. It was pretty badass to watch. But him, these receivers, even this offensive line, they had the makings of a great, air-it-out passing team, the likes of which have won many a championship over the last several years of this sport. It's been the most coveted aspect of a team in the last few years. That's an elite passing game, an elite quarterback-receiver hookup with adequate protection. And that is absolutely what we saw in Game 1. Connor Wigman rated as the highest QBR quarterback in the SEC in Week 1. Obviously, we saw it. We know what happened. Extremely accurate, extremely wise with the ball, extremely secure with the ball, and he just knows how to get the ball into his receiver's hands in a way that no one else can touch his pass. He puts the ball in the correct space with good timing. I wouldn't say his timing is great yet, which is even more exciting. I think it was pretty apparent that a couple of his balls were either behind or underthrown, if only by a hair. And of course, that's going to clean up. That was a first game. And it wasn't even enough to force an incompletion because he passed for 78% in Game 1. So there's room for improvement with Connor. Isn't that freaking exciting, guys? I mean, he's just getting started. This is only really his 5th game, and he looked that good. I mean, sleeper Heisman talks already, and that's getting ahead of things. But when you have that conversation coming out of this offense after the last 2 years, you feel really good about it. I compared these receivers to the era of receivers that Alabama had from in like the 2010s going up to 2020. They don't have that same regime. They don't have that same armory of receiver weapons that they typically do right now. But for the last 10 years or so, Alabama is a great example of just waves of playmakers in a receiver room. And it really looks like Texas A&M has that. I really love the rotation they have because Ja'Day Walker, it turns out he looks like a pretty good, consistent, reliable player. Now, he did drop a touchdown pass from Max late in the game. I don't know if that's something to expect going forward because he had a really, really good clutch third and long grab from Connor earlier in the game, which was very promising, but he played a lot. So I really like what that addition does for this receiver room because it allows you to sub players out, sub players in. I don't even think Moose started. Moose came off the bench. Ja'Day came off the bench. They bring players in and out. And what they're able to do, since they have 3 running backs and 3 tight ends that they're playing, they can change formations to get players rest, change formations depending on the looks they're getting, on the personnel. A lot of options based on the skill positions of this offense. I don't need to talk about Noah Thomas. We saw what it was. I was very impressed. He was as advertised. And the thing that was surprising to me, as I mentioned in my previous video, was that he was able to do things with the ball in his hands after the catch, which I kind of thought he would just be a possession guy. No, he was making guys miss, spin moves, quick feet, diving for first downs. It was really cool to see. Evan Stewart led the team in yardage, always a deep ball threat, always a threat after the catch. He did have the fumble. That's something to keep an eye on because he had a huge fumble versus App State last year. I don't know if you remember that. I've kind of erased most of that App State stuff. I'm surprised I even remembered that. But that happened. So hopefully not a trend. Hopefully it's just something that you kind of get with these crazy good playmakers that are really confident in their abilities. I'm kind of glad it happened early so it can be a point of emphasis moving forward. But Evan Stewart's a baller. You have 2 top-tier receivers on this team at least. Because Moose barely got going in this game. He had a couple of receptions late. He had the big touchdown late from Max, which was great to see. You love to see that Max Johnson got in there and ran the offense because, as we've seen the last 2 years, quarterbacks do get hurt. So it was great to see Max in there. Moose got in there, had some action. Ja'Day had some action. And, of course, we know what we have in Anias. He only had a few receptions in the game. One really nice big gain and a really good punt return that got limited by a penalty. But still, it looks like Anias is truly back. So yeah, didn't bury the lead here. This passing game is really good. And hopefully it travels. Hopefully we see it continue. Another thing I'm really hopeful to see continue moving forward was good offensive line play. The quarterback had time. Connor had time in the pocket. He had time to make decisions, to see blitzes coming. He had a clean pocket the whole night. And after the game, I had kind of thought that maybe it broke down in the second half. As long as the starters were in, or the starter rotation, which includes Dewberry off the bench now, he had time. Very minimal whiffs by this offensive line. Very minimal whiffs by the O-line. Of course, it's a first game. Not everyone was perfect. Some players had some missed assignments, missed plays. But that's always going to happen. It wasn't egregious. It didn't look like it was something that would be habitual moving forward. We might have a really good O-line this year. And as Jimbo just said in his interview today on Monday, last year, the fact that so many guys had to play meaningful snaps for this offensive line due to injury, it's only going to pay dividends this year and make that O-line so much deeper. Because we saw Crownover get in late. We saw Fothery coming in off the bench, which was really weird to me. I still don't understand that. I guess they're still working him back in. It really seems like with Fothery, his timeline of recovering from that injury really lined up with the start of the season. So he's really just getting back into action. I mean, truly in the middle of camp, it seems like, is when he was marked healthy from that spring injury. So this is going to be a ramp up. But Fothery off the bench this year, I'll take it. Plug and play whenever you need to. Now, of course, you're starting a true freshman in Basantis on that offensive line, and Fothery can go in there and sub anytime. He can go in and sub for Trey Zune, even though Trey Zune had a great game. And talking about Basantis, solid player. He missed a couple of calls. He missed a couple of line calls, a couple of blitz calls. But for the most part, very solid. Nothing you wouldn't expect from a first game for a true freshman at tackle. He definitely has the physicality, the strength for his age. It was just getting some of those calls right, which, you know, that's the kind of stuff that you can clean up over the year. And as I mentioned, most of the negatives you'll see from this first game are things that can be improved upon, nothing glaring. So the offensive line gave him time. They were able to punch a couple of holes for a couple of big runs. It did look like New Mexico was kind of selling out to stop the run, and that's why they were just targeting those deep balls the whole game. That, and there was a physical discrepancy between the receivers and the safeties. So, yeah, it makes sense they weren't leaning heavily on the run, and a couple of runs did get stuffed. But keep in mind, guys, we are working in 3 new running backs after the Spiller A-Chain era of running back at Texas A&M, which was so bountiful. Great running backs for the last 5 years at Texas A&M. From Travion until A-Chain. Now you're working new ones in. Of course, there's going to be a ramp up there, but I think with the way the offense is passing, the way the O-line looks, I think the trajectory moving forward, it really bodes well for this running game to eventually become established. But you don't have much time because Miami is such a huge game, which we'll talk about later. But I like what I saw from the running backs. I think all 3 had at least one big play. It wasn't a consistent ground attack. I want to see it ramp up. I mean, I don't know if I would call it a concern or a weakness. I would say it's a question mark moving forward, something to watch. Now, one area where I am slightly concerned, and of course you're concerned here when you lose a player like Donovan Green, is at tight end, just to round out this offense. The only area I'm a little bit concerned about is tight end. Now, there was some good tight end blocking throughout this game, but it did break down a couple of times. I think the best blocker this game was Jake Johnson. I think Jake Johnson was consistent. I think he made a lot of the right calls on the line. And I think he was really solid. I think Max got out physicaled a couple times, and I think that could just be the first game, getting back into things, getting blown into the running lanes a couple times, falling off a couple of blocks. But I trust that a guy as mature and as experienced as Max can get some of that stuff together. But I did like what I saw from Jake Johnson blocking. Now, no one got involved in the receiving game. So that's something we're going to want to have because Jimbo and Bobby both utilize tight ends. They both like to have a good, productive tight end. And we didn't see that in game 1. But to oppose that, you have really good receivers. So maybe you don't need them as much as you normally would. But when you get into SEC play or the game versus Miami, it's really nice to have. So another thing to look at for this offense going forward, tight end room, does anybody get involved in the receiving game? But they're not afraid to take the tight end out of the game. As we saw, the way they started the game was with 2 running backs. They didn't even start the game with a tight end scheme. It was running backs and receivers. So you can plug and play there. You don't have to run a tight end heavy system, but they did. They ran tight ends the whole time. But they're able to be versatile with it is what I'm trying to say. So those would be the only 2 areas to watch out for. Of course, you want to see the O-line remain consistent. Of course, you want to see this offense travel and continue to be productive in the air. But from what I saw in game 1, this offense has all the tools, and they have it between the ears, especially at quarterback, especially at the offensive line. I mean, receivers, those 3 areas look pretty damn secure. And the biggest question mark we had going into the season with this offense was the O-line. And I would say they passed the first test with flying colors. Now, before we move on to the defense, just a quick note. Keep in mind, we did play New Mexico. It wasn't the best competition. But as I kind of alluded to earlier in this video, A&M showed signs of things to come in a negative way versus the subpar opponents last year, whether it was App State, Sam Houston, even struggling versus UMass, even though that was a rainy, weird game. You want to see it versus these teams. You have to see it. So take everything with a grain of salt there, but also take it as a good sign of things to come. So defense. And guys, if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing. It helps me greatly. I'm trying to grow this thing. I'm trying to bring more Aggies into the discussion. We have a really good comment section. It's almost like a forum, honestly. I have people jumping in there, commentating on games that are happening as they happen, jumping into the comment section. I'm always looking to respond to you guys. I try to respond to every single comment that comes through. So if you subscribe, if you like, if you comment, it helps us grow this channel, and we can get more Aggies in here in the mix and just talk some football, talk some good old Aggie football. All right, so the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to sum up the most positive outcome that we got from this game defensively in 2 words. Josh DeBerry. What a grab from the transfer portal that these Aggies got in Josh DeBerry. Great tackler, solid in coverage, making plays all over the field, big interception, big sack. I mean, he has everything. He's not only a great fill-in piece, he is a plus player that these Aggies have added to the team. This is such a huge development because one of my biggest question marks going into the year for this defense was who's going to be that other corner across the field from Tyreek Chappelle. Because everywhere else on this secondary, you're feeling very confident. You feel really good about your nickel, your star, your safeties. You feel good about Tyreek Chappelle. But you had a big glaring hole there. Who was that next starter caliber player? And I don't think that you would really worry too much about depth with that position because there's a lot of names, a lot of bodies, a lot of players there. But did you have another star SEC caliber player, SEC starter caliber player for sure to start across from Tyreek Chappelle? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. Josh DeBerry, big play after big play, and the best thing about him is just how good of a tackler he is. As we saw in his interview today, I didn't know this. He played linebacker in high school. We knew that at Boston College he played safety. He played that nickel star position. So obviously getting in on more of the running game tackling there, which is a more physical game for a DB, that paid dividends this game, and you could see it. You could just see how physical he is and how smart he is and how opportune he is with the interception and the sack, big tackle after big tackle. I mean, that is such a get for this team. That is such a positive development. We also saw Javen Thomas, the true freshman who looked very studly in his camp videos, and all the intel from camp said that he was one of the better prospects in this DB room coming in from the 2023 class. And he looks solid out there. No issues with him on the field, no glaring weaknesses whenever you put the true freshman out there. But I think the best thing about this whole situation is that with DeBerry emerging and returning to that all ACC caliber player that he has been, you get to bring Javen Thomas off the bench, and that's your spell guy. So that just galvanizes this bench, galvanizes this defense, gives you more of a rotation. And another really cool thing about DeBerry is he played safety, and he's played nickel before, but he played safety for the Ags this game. So that gives you even more versatility. You bring Javen, you can spell players with DeBerry, you can spell DeBerry, and all of those safety nickel star guys are pretty interchangeable. We saw them moving around. There's a lot of versatility on this in this DB group and on this defense as a whole. But I think that we can be very confident about this secondary moving forward. Now, they did give up a little bit of the short yardage stuff, but that may have been by design. They were only giving up underneath slant stuff, quick hitters, but they were making the tackles on those plays. So as long as they're going to get the tackle, as long as they're going to remain physical and get players on the ground, that's okay. The thing is, there's going to be a level up in the opposition in terms of athleticism, caliber of player, shiftiness as you move forward in the season, get into SEC play, and again, versus Miami. So you really are going to get tested there. But if that's the mantra, I mean, bend, don't break. And we said that last year, but it just turns out it was bend, 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 then break. But if this defense is able to continue tackling well, you can live with those short, quick hitters. So moving on to the linebackers, another area of concern on this team, obviously. It's been an area of concern for years at Texas A&M, since Buddy Johnson left the program, really. Linebacker group was solid this game. I think Edgerrin Cooper is maybe the most important player on this defense. I think there was a clear difference in this defense when he was on the bench. The touchdown drive they had was a drive in which he was spelled. He was on the bench getting a rest, which is good that you can do that, but there were some gap assignment issues whenever he left the game, some physicality issues in that front seven whenever he left the game. He's a really important player. He's a player that we've touted as a potential star on this defense, and I think he showed that he's maybe taken a leap this year. It's too early to tell with him because you need to be tested by some of these upper echelon opponents in that position. But he looked very secure, very disciplined, really good tackling. We really loved what we saw from Edge. And York was at the right place at the right time. Obviously, there's going to be a ramp up with a true freshman starting at that position. But I think we're pretty happy with what we saw from York, fitting, getting some tackles on the game, and just getting some experience under his belt. And as Jimbo has said many times, he's calling plays out there, making calls. That's hugely impressive for such a young player. And apparently he's a vocal leader. He's a guy that is talking to players and giving advice and sharing wisdom as a true freshman, and that's huge. You really love that you get that from this linebacker group. Off the bench, and I don't mean ever to rag on players, to dog on players. That's not why I'm here. That's not my intention. But I will call areas of concern as I see them. It's good to talk about these things. And this is college. Players can improve over the course of a year. So if we're talking about negative aspects of any specific player now, it's not obviously not personal. It's not to dog on him. And it's very, very conceivable that they can improve on whatever areas we highlight here over the course of just a few weeks. But I was a little bit concerned with Chris Russell maybe just getting back into his inconsistencies that he showed at times last year. Obviously in 2022 he had a career year, but it was a year where gap fitting and linebacker play was an issue on the team. So you take that with a grain of salt. And he also wasn't super consistent on that one touchdown, the rushing touchdown. he was kind of in the wrong gap and he got washed out by the offensive line. So that's a little bit of a concern there coming off the bench. But he is a vet. He's been around a long time. I think you go home, you go back to the locker room, you look at film, you can work through that kind of stuff. He's a good physical guy. He's pretty athletic. Hopefully he can work through that because he's going to play a lot. He's going to be one of the spell guys. And J.D. Davis, Juriante Davis, the new transfer who looks very physical and solid out there, he got hurt, and I personally would consider him questionable for this Miami game just based on how it looked on the field. Jimbo said he's okay. He's banged up but okay. I would edge towards him not playing versus Miami, just my personal opinion. No insider info there. My opinion only. And then Martrell Harris looks solid out there. We didn't get a huge sample size of him. He got called for 2 penalties in that game. 1 penalty was not meant to be called on him because he wasn't even on the field. It was meant to be called on Shamar Stewart, number 4, but they called it on 40. So he really only had 1 penalty, and that 1 penalty was unnecessary roughness. It was pretty ticky-tacky. I could see you calling it, but not every ref's going to call what he did there unnecessary roughness. So I wouldn't, be down on him because of that too much. But we really didn't get a huge sample size of him. So it remains to be seen what we get from Martrell Harris, who I have deemed as a very important player for this team, being the most experienced linebacker off the bench. Now moving down to the most fun aspect of this defense, and that is that defensive line that just hits you in waves. It looked like there were 3 or 4 waves of D lineman configurations, and then they can just plug and play guys and mix players around. It's just so fun to see the versatility, the subs, the young guys get in there. We didn't see Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy or Hicks until late in the game, but Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy looked freaking good. He was getting penetration from the inside. He was blowing players away. It looked like what you would expect a player like him to look like against New Mexico. So that's super encouraging. You hope to see him get into some action and get into the rotation. I think he will. Walter Nolan looked like a beast. He had the 3rd most tackles on the team, which is not something you always see from a D tackle. It's usually a linebacker or a safety thing. But he was making plays in the flats, in the backfield, at the line of scrimmage. Walter Nolan is an absolute beast. Love to see him play. He just looks like he has a really good head about him now, better than last year. Like he's matured a bit, which is exactly what we needed to see with this defensive line, them just growing up. And it just looks like his level of focus has definitely gone up a notch. Just in the eyes, in the body language, he just looks really, really professional and good out there. So you love to see that from Big Walt. McKinley was disruptive. He got in the backfield. He blew some plays up. And then Shamar Turner, the other starter, looked really good. I didn't see much from LT Overton, but this team obviously trusts him enough to play and be good because he's the starter at the strong side defensive end. He was solid last year. You're really confident to have him out there. The unsung hero of this D-line, in my opinion, this game, the underrated story coming out of this game, in my opinion, was Shamar Stewart. He had a couple of bad penalties, but he was still in good position regardless of those penalties. The play where he got the face mask, he absolutely destroyed the offensive line, got through and got to the quarterback. Crazy closing speed for his size, crazy athleticism. It seemed like he was living in the backfield, and he was in the 3rd wave of that defensive line. I am really excited about Shamar Stewart moving forward. In this Miami game, traveling to Miami where he's from, I could see this being a huge game for him. And they hit him in the 3rd wave of that D-line, so of course, Miami knows about Shamar Stewart. He was recruited by them. He was close to going there. But having a guy like that in your 3rd wave of D linemen is just insane. So, guys, I think we're very confident that this D-line, I don't know if I'm ready to say they took the leap, but I'm definitely confident enough to say that they have improved from year 1 to year 2. I'm talking about these 2022 guys. And then, obviously, you have McKinley back. Fadil was in there making plays. Everybody contributed on this D-line. Everybody contributed it. And versatility there, versatility in the defensive backs, versatility on this defense. We saw some of these stand-up defensive ends like Diggs and Eni White and Malik Silla drop into coverage as needed, which is crazy. It's good to see that versatility there. And then the ability to plug and play anywhere on that D-line is just awesome. Now, the last thing I want to say about this defense, and this is great. No 3-man front, guys. It wasn't there. It didn't happen. 4 D linemen the entire game. Obviously, we've called for that. We've wanted that. If you stand a guy up, if you stand your edge guy up, that's fine. You got to show that. You got to have those bodies out there, those physical guys out there. That's the strength of this team. You got to use them all. And it looks like year 2 Durkin is trending the right way, just as it did with his stint at Ole Miss. So guys, that is my offense and defensive report, the things we learned, the things we're going to take away moving forward. Very positive stuff. And I'll give you some more notes in a second. Another thing I wanted to talk about with this team is that we have a 12th man again. And you know what? Choate was great. He was a great guy, but he was a long snapper. He didn't really get the energy going with the team. Sam Matthews made several plays this game. He had 2 tackles, but he was in on so many special teams plays. And he's out there. He needs to learn how to hype the crowd up. I don't know if you guys saw Cullen Gillespie tweeted at him after the game saying, great play, but you got to hype that crowd up. You got to hype the 12th man up. You are the 12th man. Get out there, get crazy. So if he can channel a little bit of that inner Cullen, I think we'll be in a great spot with the 12th man, energizing the team. Who he seems very respected among the team, and I see why. He's making plays out there. He's playing, which is awesome. He looks badass out there. So really cool to have that kind of a 12th man back on this team. That's a positive for sure. All right, and just a few more notes before I get out of here, guys. I'll see you guys in a couple of days with my pregame video. I might be making an appearance on a Miami channel, so stay tuned for that. I'll let you guys know if I get on with this guy from Miami to talk about the game. But a couple of notes. I'm really questioning what's happening with Fothery. He's healthy enough to play, but he wasn't healthy enough to get in on the important reps of the game. So I'm wondering what's happening there. I'm wondering if he's taking a little bit longer than expected to get up to speed. I don't know who you put him in for. I don't know if you want to take Basantis out. Basantis looked fine out there. He wasn't a liability at all. But I guess we'll learn a lot more against a more talented team, Miami. So just something to keep an eye on is Fothery, his health, how he's looking. I thought his body looked fine. I don't think he looked out of shape or anything. I mean, he was probably sedentary for a while just because of the injury to his knee, but he looked fine out there. Another thing to keep an eye on is Noah Thomas's health. I have no insider info. I'm not saying he's injured. All I'm saying is what we've seen, what I've observed. He was limping at times during the game. He did play late. He played a lot this game, even late in the game, which I thought was really good. I'll talk about this in a second. I thought it was good that he played late, but he got a lot of mileage on his body this game. I want to see how that foot settles in over the week. I hope he's good. I think he'll be good. He looked good even late when he was limping a little bit. What a guy. I mean, some of the best players that don't get hurt do get hurt. They're just really good at hiding it and and just keeping a poker face. So that's a really cool attribute to have. But keep an eye on it. We did see a picture of him in a boot from an NIL appearance a couple weeks before the season started. So just keep an eye on it. I just want to be real with you guys. I don't want to scare you guys. I just want to make it known to you if you didn't catch it. And then another thing I wanted to mention was just how important I thought it was that Jimbo kept the starters in so late in the game. I mean, we saw Evan Stewart playing in the fourth quarter, and I think if Evan Stewart's playing, that's indicative of your starters playing across the board because, you know, he's one of the best players on this team. But the starters were able to play and just kind of shake off the cobwebs, shake off the 5-7 ick that they have all over their bodies and in their souls and in their hearts. Just get out there and really stamp this new season in. The O-line stayed in pretty late. Chemistry forming, get that real game action in. I loved how at the end of the half, Jimbo was aggressive with trying to get another score under their belts, even though the kick got blocked. They were really good in that 2-minute drill scenario, getting the ball back, driving, get in position to make a good field goal attempt. I love all that stuff I saw this game. Did you guys like that? I thought it was awesome. I know you put guys at risk. Like I said with Noah, he got a lot of mileage on him with that maybe gimpy foot. I don't know. But I thought it was really good to see, and I really love that they got that experience. And, of course, as I said earlier, it's great to see Max get in there. You never know if you're going to need him, and we're just so grateful to have 2 solid QBs at the helm. But, guys, this is a really important week. This is honestly, in my opinion, this is the season right here. I mean, is this going to be an upper echelon team or a good team? I think we raised the bar for this team with week 1. I think the floor raised from maybe a 7-win team to an 8-9 win team, and that's your floor. So I'm confident enough to say that coming out of this first game. But if we go out there and beat Miami and we continue to build on things that we saw in game 1, I'm going to have to reevaluate my 10-win prediction on the year. And I'm sticking to it. I'm not adjusting my 10-2 prediction yet. I still think we lose to Tennessee because that's just a really tough scheduling situation there with Bama the week before. Tennessee that week, Tennessee having the bye when we play Bama. And then I still say we slip up one other game we're not supposed to. But man, am I feeling the urge to change that to 11. This West looks like it could be wide open. Bama did look good. Milroe looks solid. LSU did not look great. Obviously, we just saw them get smacked pretty hard by FSU, especially in that second half. They're going to be a different team by the time the Ags play them the last week of the year. So let's pump the brakes on LSU being maybe subpar this year just a little bit. They're going to evolve. As we saw last year, they get better as the year goes on. They're going to figure things out. They're probably going to move Perkins out of that middle linebacker position back to where he's strongest, which is at the edge, rushing. They're going to adjust. They're going to get better. So let's not write that off just yet at all. I don't think any of y'all are doing that. But in case you are, I would advise caution there. But they're not this juggernaut. I mean, I think that's apparent. I think we can say that. They're not this head and shoulders team better. And, I mean, we know. We beat their ass last year. So, I mean, we can beat them. And I predict us to beat them at LSU, at least before I saw the teams. And I probably feel better about that now. So the West is open, guys. The West is open. And Georgia looks like they're going to need some time to get that offense going. I mean, there's opportunity, man. And this team looked good. We probably feel as good as any team in the country coming out of week one besides FSU. They're probably on cloud nine. But, man, feels real good right now to be an Aggie, guys. It feels really, really good. So, guys, that is going to be it for this show. What am I going to call this show? Last year I called it Lay of the Aggieland. I'm kind of workshopping it. I was thinking like Aggieland Weekly, something like that. I think I'm going to keep calling it Lay of the Aggieland until we come up with something. If you feel inclined to do so, comment any ideas. I'm all ears right now. But I'm going to see you guys later this week with my pregame video. And I'm considering adding a couple of new shows per week. I'm considering adding a live show on Thursday nights where you guys can get involved, comment, get in the chat, and maybe let you guys call in and we can talk some Aggie football live on YouTube for everybody to watch. We can just talk. Thinking about doing that. Any interest there? You guys tell me. Guys, once again, subscribe if you like this kind of content. It really helps me greatly. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the time this year is done. Get a bunch of Aggies in here. And if you're not an Aggie, jump in, subscribe. We love to have you. We'll love to talk football. I talk A&M, but I also talk about other programs at times. Anything that's important to A&M, we're definitely going to focus on that. I really appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate it if you stuck through to the end. If you did, drop a like, leave a comment, and I will see you guys Wednesday. Thanks, and gig 'em.